Hi, my name is Jody Longnecker, and I did my project on pasture-raised, also known as grass-fed, versus conventional grain-fed meats. A quote by Chris Gunners: "It's not only important what we eat, it also matters what the foods that we ate." Definitions: pasture-raised and grass-fed animals roam in a natural environment and eat grass and forage. Free-range animals are allowed to graze and forage outside for at least part of the day. Grain-fed animals consuming a mix of mostly corn, wheat, and barley. They are also given supplements to boost their health. These definitions are important to understand and know before we start going into the research of my project. Some of the most common animals that are pasture-raised, grass-fed, and grain-fed are chickens, pigs, which provide pork, and cows, which provide beef. Health, nutrition issues, and information. For starters, cows are one of the main animals discussed when talking about grass-fed versus grain-fed meats. A conventionally raised cow around the age of 6 months to 12 months is taken to a feedlot where it is rapidly fattened up with grain-based feeds made up of soy and corn. The issue with this is that conventionally raised cows are given drugs and hormones to grow faster and antibiotics that humans end up eating when they eat the meat of conventionally raised cows, also known as grain-fed meats. Grass-fed cows are normally able to live their lives on grassland and not in feedlots, and they are able to roam and eat natural products and grass all day long. The issue with this, I see none. There are two sides that we should know about animals being grass-fed or grain-fed. Morals versus what sells. There is a fine line between what should be morally correct when feeding animals and what products actually sell in the markets. Is there a difference in healthfulness? Some researchers would say that grass-fed meat has more nutritional fats, omegas, vitamins, and micronutrients. Other researchers, such as researchers at Texas A&M University's Department of Animal Science, would say there is really nothing healthier about grass-fed meats than grain-fed meats. Two sides of this situation. Should animals be fed grass, or should animals be fed grains? Here is just a picture of what grass-fed versus grain-fed meats contain. For grass-fed, cattle roam free on a pasture and eat their natural diets of grass. They contain no antibiotics and no hormones. For a cow in a grass-fed, to naturally mature, it takes about 1.5 to 2 years. In a grain-fed cow, they are mostly on feedlots and given grains. They are also given antibiotics and hormones to make them grow faster. Combined with the high energy foods of grains, drugs, and hormones, it normally only takes about a year for a cow to mature, which is why the meat is often cheaper than grass-fed cows. Nutrition. In grass-fed cows, it seems as though that the meat is normally leaner and juicier due to higher and richer contents of omega-3, fatty acids, vitamins, whereas grain-fed meat is also normally greasy and not very juicy and often has a lot more fat on them. The differences between grass-fed versus grain-fed beef. Grass-fed beef is more nutritious than grain-fed beef for reasons such as the following. Grass-fed has more vitamin A, vitamin E, and micronutrients such as potassium, iron, zinc, phosphorus, and sodium. The perception of healthiness and or safety, tenderness, juiciness, and aroma or flavor are often important criteria that influence the decision of consumers to purchase beef. The picture following below is just an example of the differences of what it looks like from grass-fed versus grain-fed. From this image, we are able to see that grain-fed meats tend to have more fats and are not as rich in color, whereas grass-fed meats do not have as much fat and are more rich in colors of pinks and reds due to all of the vitamins and natural micronutrients such as potassium, iron, zinc, phosphorus, and sodium. Other differences between grass-fed and grain-fed beefs. Grass-fed beef contains less total fat than grain-fed, which means fewer calories for grass-fed beef. Grass-fed beef has less saturated and monosaturated fatty acids than grain-fed. Both contain similar amounts of omega-6, but grass-fed beef has up to 5 times as much omega-3 than grain-fed beef. Grass-fed beef also has the correct ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids that is important for good health. Below is another picture showing an example of what raw beef would look like, grass-fed versus grain-fed. From this image, we are able to see that grass-fed meat hardly has any fat, and the grain-fed meat has more fat. New similarities that we have found between grass-fed and grain-fed. While many animals are either grass-fed or grain-fed, beef is the most common, discussed, and studied. While there have been studies on both sides of the situation, there are actually few similarities between grass-fed and grain-fed beef. The only similarities that have really shown up in research are that they both contain B12, B3, and B6. Grass-fed versus grain-fed beef. Grass-fed beef does have slightly more nutrients and is usually leaner, but it can be harder to find in grocery stores and is generally more expensive. With having grass-fed beef more expensive, it is not as accessible to families. Grain-fed beef usually contains more monosaturated fat, which is good for the heart, and is more accessible and generally considered more tender. Political, clinical, cultural, and social factors. Some research I was able to see was that the social and cultural factors play a huge role in this because there are many animal activists that not only think we should not be eating animals, but are also very passionate in the idea of what we should feed the animals. Another important aspect to understand around this topic has to do with economics. Grass-fed meats cost more in the stores and may not be affordable to some families, whether it is the healthier option or not. One very interesting aspect is that politically, the United States Department of Agriculture revoked a label in 2016 that marketed grass-fed meat as good for consumers. This created a debate in the United States for consumers worrying about if they should solely be eating grass-fed or grain-fed because of the marketing labels that the United States Department of Agriculture released. The United States Department of Agriculture's mistake. By the USDA putting out information that they will not be labeling things as just grass-fed, but more like USDA organic, will likely harm farmers and ranchers who rely on those labels for their income for their own families. It seems as though there are not as many farmers and ranchers who only feed fed, which means that they rely on the people that only solely buy grass-fed meats. If the USDA cannot determine or regulate what it is or not what is or is not grass-fed and how it is defined, then do we know what we are actually eating? This is considered the loss of consumer confidence because they cannot be certain they are getting legit only grass-fed meat if the USDA will not define and correctly label and market the meat. Marketing labels. What should you trust with grass-fed beef? All cows eat grass. So, how do we tell if a label is trustworthy? That is all a cow is eating, just grass. Trusting labels include the following. If you see a label that says grass-fed and grass-finished, or a label that is packaged on one or more credible third-party certification labels, then you know it is a trusted meat to eat that is only grass-fed. Possibly okay labels include USDA process verified or 100% grass-fed. Labels that you should not trust with grass only eating and feeding beef is labels such as grass-fed but have no third-party certification logos, as well as a logo on the meat that says grass-fed and grain-finished. Grass-fed and grass-finished means that the cow was eating grass its entire life and it was eating grass up until the day it was killed. Whereas grass-fed and grain-finished means that a cow started to eat grass in its earlier life, but before it had died or was killed, it was eating solely grains. Here is a picture of what we should trust or not trust if we are going to go buy grass-fed beef at the store. What is or is not ethical about this situation? Is there an exact definition of what is or is not ethically correct by the way animals are fed? Or is this issue a matter of morality and what one person's opinion is over another? There are many animal rights activists that believe animals should not be sent to feedlots and should be grass-fed. But why? Here's a reason. At feedlots, many of times animals do not get treated with any type of respect. Many times the feedlots are not clean and they are overcrowded, leaving no room for the large animals such as cows to roam like they are meant to do. This is why a lot of people say that grasslands and grass-fed meat is more natural because the animals on grass-fed lots are actually being able to roam free as they please. I believe that another issue with the ethics component is not only what the animal is being fed, but also the location that this is taking place. Feedlots versus grasslands. I think there is a major component built in whether or not it is ethically correct to raise grain-fed animals in feedlots where the animals are not treated with any type of respect. When we think about ethical, a lot of times we do think about the activists and what they are promoting. When they are promoting grass-fed meats, even if they are vegan, it's because they would rather see cows being fed just by grass what they are meant to eat, as well as being able to roam free on grasslands that they don't have any restrictions. Whereas when they don't appreciate grain-fed meats, it is because they don't like how the animals are being treated, as well as they are being overcrowded with no room, and normally feedlots are dirty and not properly taken care of. So, what's all this grass-fed versus grain-fed stuff about anyway? For this research project, I focused on not only which type of feeding is healthier for the animals and the humans eating the animals, but also the ethical issues around grass-fed versus grain-fed from an activist point of view and researchers' point of views. In doing this research, I was able to look at scholarly journals that helped me better make my own opinions. But I was also able to look at things such as the USDA, which does in fact control most of what we eat and what goes out and is produced and what we are able to buy in the grocery stores. Now, if the USDA is putting out things that are not reliable, such as USDA organic, which doesn't always give a clear indication whether or not the animals were grass-fed or grain-fed, then sometimes it's hard for the consumer to pick a side what they should buy. On another side, from looking at an activist point of view and doing some research on activist websites, which I have listed in my resources, we're able to see that activists most of the time are vegan or vegetarian, which means that they don't believe in eating any animal products or testing any products on animals. But like I said earlier, activists, from an activist point of view, they would like to see grass-fed meats being bought over grain-fed meats because grass-fed meats allow the animals to have respect and they allow the animals to roam free on grasslands and not be confined at feedlots where they are not taken care of. Overall, what you need to know is that there is a major difference in the two ways of feeding. And the real question is grass-fed or grain-fed better for the animals, humans, and economy? P.S. This is happening all over the world, not just the United States. In fact, the United States has the least amount of grass-fed farms compared to other countries. The United States gets a majority of their grass-fed meat from Australia. While you are entitled to your own opinion, I am going to give you mine. Personally, I believe grass-fed is healthier, not only for humans, but also healthier for the cows and chickens and pigs and any other animals that fall into the category of being grass-fed or grain-fed. I think that there are many more nutrients that come from all natural grass-fed and grass-finished meats. That is something we really need to be cautious of, that when we are buying the meats, it's grass-fed and grass-finished. Also, I think it is healthier for the animals because they are able to roam free and eat the grass as they please. Where at feedlots, the cows are overcrowded, living in dirty conditions, and they are not treated with any sort of respect. While it is more expensive to purchase grass-fed meats, there must be a reason for it. Probably because it is healthier and more time-consuming with raising the cows. In my opinion, overall, I think grass-fed meats are better for humans and the cows, and even though the meat is more expensive, it is worth it to consume healthier and better products for our bodies. Like I had said earlier, it is completely up to you to decide what you morally and ethically think is correct, as well as what you want to buy at the grocery store. But next time you are at the grocery store, you're in the beef section, the pork section, or the chicken section, please make sure you make the right decision on what you think is right. Take into consideration the feedlots versus the grasslands that the cows are being raised. Also, take into consideration what the cows are eating, which ultimately decides what you are eating. If you don't mind having hormones or antibiotics put into your body, then grain-fed is best for you. If you do want to be cautious about antibiotics or hormones being put into your body, I would personally spend the extra money in order to get grass-fed meats. Thank you for listening to my presentation. These are my resources I used as well. Here are the URLs and references. Thank you.